Hey everybody, spoilers for all things Uncharted, Uncharted video games, and the movie. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Script Department. I'm John. Today I'm joined by my fellow explorer, Caleb, to search for a video game adaptation movie that lives up to the hype. All that is a roundabout way of saying we're going to be reviewing Uncharted today. Before we get into that, if you haven't done so already, do check out our website, scriptdepartment.net, for all the latest projects our global network of screenwriters get up to. Follow us on social media and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for The Script Department. All the links are in the description as well. And don't forget, you can buy us a coffee too. Hit the link and kick us a few bucks. Caleb, what's your experience with the Uncharted games? What were you coming to with this film? What were you looking for? More importantly, did you actually enjoy the movie?
So my experience with the games is very limited. I have all of them. I own all of them, but I've only played like the first third of the first game, basically. But I'm aware of what they are, where they kind of fit into the marketplace, and like how it developed with Uncharted 4. And I believe you said that Neil Druckmann directed that one. So it kind of became a little more nuanced and like mature as far as like what themes it was exploring because of where the character was at. So I'm aware of that. But other than that, not much. I'm not bringing my love for the franchise. I'm again aware of all of it, but the movie was entertaining. It's very cheesy, but to my understanding, and you'll be able to talk more on this, I feel like, than me, it had the set pieces similar to the games. I don't know if it went too far with the ending, but yeah, I mean, it was what I thought it was going to be. So
See, so first of all, just on the Uncharted games. So Amy Hennig did the first three, and she was I think the real driving force behind those games. And then Neil Druckmann took over then for 4, because I think Amy Hennig was gone by that point from Naughty Dog. I know she was gone at that point from Naughty Dog, but Neil Druckmann didn't bring for me anyway, I don't think Neil Druckmann brought the storytelling mastery to that game.
Okay.
To that franchise. I think he's an amazing storyteller and did great work with The Last of Us and so on. I mean, just incredible work with that. He's raised the standard for the games industry in terms of what characters should be in stories and all that. But I think he was standing on the shoulders of Amy Hennig when he took over Uncharted 4, because the great thing about the Uncharted franchise, and as you can tell from the way I'm talking about it, I love that franchise so much. It's my favorite video game franchise. Uncharted 4, I just played it recently, and I finished it again recently for maybe the third or fourth time. And there's no doubt in my mind right now, the way I'm feeling coming off the back of that game, that this is the best AAA video game ever made.
Really?
It is perfect storytelling, perfect characters, perfect game design, production design, perfect use of sets as a kind of a mirror for what the characters are going through and all that kind of stuff. It's really wonderful. The relationships are fantastic. And but the relationships were always fantastic. The characterization was always fantastic in Uncharted games. Druckmann didn't bring something new to the table in that front. I think what Druckmann brought to the franchise was that kind of polish that The Last of Us had, and that kind of maybe that vision for how to kind of just go even bigger than we ever thought we could go before.
Okay.
So that was
more in terms of production, you'd say?
Like, yeah, I think so. I think he brought if the Uncharted games rather were the Indiana Jones of video games, right? If they were the next step forward after Lara Croft and all that, then Neil Druckmann's the guy who gets it to the Oscars, so to speak, who gets it to Game of the the Game of the Year award at the Game Awards, that kind of thing. He just kind of pushed the envelope just that extra bit further in terms of the writing and the overall vision for how to use it. It's just that extra little bit polished, but the writing was still fantastic in those other games. That's what I was bringing when I watched this movie. I wanted those great characters and those great set pieces, and we don't get that in this movie. When you go and eventually play those other games, you will see that, well, we got the real poor cousin of that game, and so I chuckled along the way at certain parts. I had fun with the airplane scene, for example, but I couldn't help but think about the way in which the games did it better. There isn't a single thing in this movie, where the games didn't do it better. Now, the thing about Uncharted is that it is fundamentally a cinematic experience, even when you're playing it as a video game. All the trailer moments are not gameplay moments. They're cutscene moments. They're witty lines of dialogue. They're powerhouse, emotional moments. Just like the great standout moments in The Last of Us, in these other Naughty Dog games, are in those beautiful cutscenes and the performances of the actors and so on. So to me, there's no excuse for the quality of the writing that we got in this movie.
Yeah.
It felt like it was cheap. It felt like it was flat. It felt like they had just said, let's take a spec script, an adventure spec script, some mesh of the Da Vinci Code meets Indiana Jones or something, where it's, half of it's set in Barcelona, half of it is, or a quarter of it is set out in the jungle then. And let's just splash some Uncharted names in there for good measure. That's what I felt like we got.
It's like a skin of the video game.
But here's the thing: I don't even think it is worthy of the title Uncharted, because the first act is set in New York, the second act is set in Barcelona, the third act is set in the Philippines, slightly off the coast of a holiday resort.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean,
that was the question that was going through my mind, was like, when are we? This usually isn't in like the city, right? Or in civilization.
You're in London at the beginning, but it's you're very quickly out of London, and you are even the auction scene that takes place in this movie, which was cherry picked from Uncharted 4. In Uncharted 4, it's set in the Amalfi Coast, and it's up in the hills, away out in the countryside, the Italian countryside, and this is Manhattan, and it feels like a movie called Uncharted, whether it's based on a movie or based on a video game franchise or not, should at the very least live up to its title. And this never did that for me.
I couldn't help but think of, while I was watching the first two acts, I couldn't help but think of, man, Tomb Raider, the first movie, did this better. Like, even though that that movie has all of its own problems. And
are you talking about the Angelina Jolie one, is it?
Yes. Yeah. And like, it's a movie I grew up on, so like I go back and watch it for fun, but yeah, like that movie's very Uncharted. And obviously, they have like their own connections.
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is the Indiana Jones movie that people deride, right? That is head and shoulders above the adventure film that we get here, in terms of the degree of characterization, the connection between the mission itself and the characters and what they're going through and all that kind of stuff. None of which has anything is present in this. Let's get into the relationships in the characters in this. Okay, so
Yeah.
we've got Nate, we've got Sully, we've got his relationship with his brother Sam, we've got his relationship with Chloe, the kind of the untrustworthy sidekick. How did you feel about these dynamics, these characters themselves, what they brought to the table? How were you engaging with them?
So again, my knowledge was limited on, like, I think I know how they're like Sully and Nate were like their working relationship, but I'm trying to like
But it doesn't matter. I mean, my wife was watching it with me, and she's never played the game, so she's
yeah.
only seen me play a little bit of it. So I mean, like, I think you shouldn't have to know this stuff, but like,
No, no.
you going into it as an outsider, what do you think of it? Like,
Yeah. Well, so that's what was going through my head as I was watching it and trying to keep up with that, but I think what we get again, yeah, like you said, is watered down. Like it feels like, oh, this is very much how it has to be. There's a few
mm,
moments in there where I was like, okay, that's actually like giving a little bit of characterization to, like, good moments to their characters, but for the most part, it's pretty just it feels very safe on like every side of this movie, and so like as far as with the characters, uh, it doesn't really feel like it goes deeper to me. But yeah, so like theirs feels like we get the most out of them because they have the most screen time, but that doesn't really feel like, or that's not really saying much, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah,
Just because of the amount of screen time, it's kind of the same beat over and over. You're like Nate saying, like, all you're after is the gold. You don't care about anyone. Kind of hitting that beat over and over. And then even with Chloe, like she kind of says the same thing. So it's like it's just one note, kind of
yeah,
just rehashed. Which I get.
yeah.
I get that in the terms of their profession and setting that up in this world, but like it doesn't really develop much further than that.
Yeah, I mean, it is. This is not actually something that the games deal with. And again, I keep referring back to the games because you've got all the ingredients right there. And why call it Uncharted if you're not going to be if you're not going to try and be faithful to the ideas and the themes of it? There is a game called Uncharted Among Thieves, a reference to No Honor Among Thieves, and it is about characters stabbing each other in the back and so on. But those characters stabbing you in the back are generally there. Like, Chloe is a mischievous character in that game, but she's a hero in these stories, and she even is the star of her own game, Lost Legacy, which is a fantastic one as well. Um, and as the relationship between Nate and Sully has never been one of mistrust. It's always been one built on, like, he's like a surrogate father to Nate, and Nate is like a surrogate son to Sully, and Sully would never use Nate. And Nate Sully uses Nate in this game, or sorry, in this movie a lot. Like he's always there, just clearly using him. There's a moment at the end which really annoyed me as well, where they're in the helicopter. Nate is like hanging on for dear life. Sully's got his bag of gold, and he has to choose between the gold or rescuing Nate. And he's like, "Oh, god damn it!" And he like throws the bag away and he rescues Nate. And I'm like, no, the Sully that we know in these games would never question it for a second. In fact, the Sully that you see in the later games is the voice of reason, who's like, guys, you got your pride tied up in all this. You need to walk away, right? We need to, like, there are many times in the games where Sully is the one saying walk away. And in this, it does feel like Mark Wahlberg is the one that has to learn a lesson.
Yeah.
Like he's the one who
Yeah.
needs to learn to let go of the gold, whereas Nate is the one that usually grows as a character, and I never felt Nate went on any arc, had any arc in this movie, or any growth. He never learned that actually the real prize is Elena, the love of his life, or anything like that, or the real prize is knowing or learning more about his brother, or anything. No, it just was very,
Well,
very
he's
superficial. It's gold
yeah, yeah.
is the treasure, right? And that's not what these games were ever
Yeah.
about. And I was saying it to Michaela as we were watching it, was at this point when you discover the treasure in the games, the characters don't even care about the treasure anymore. It's like, we need to rescue this person, or we need to get out of here, and along the way we've discovered this thing. And it's almost like this last temptation to keep you in this dangerous place, and you have to learn to walk away from it. And in this, it was very much like, hey, it's a reward, and we did it. And it's like, no, wipe the smile off your face, because you're not supposed to be smiling at this point in these stories. So
Well,
anyway,
and like
yeah.
even them losing the gold at the end,
Mm,
like is just under circumstance. Like they
yeah,
just happen to lose it. It's not out of anything character driven, and they're just still like sad, but then they start pulling it out of their pockets.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, no, it's yeah, very superficial, like you said, and definitely with Nate's character, like he feels like a perfect character already. Like he doesn't, like you said, doesn't go through any change or any arc. Um, he's the one who's like, we need to trust, and he's the perfect character. Um,
Nate is a character that has a really wonderful backstory, and I won't spoil anything for you because if you haven't played Uncharted 4,
I mean, you can.
but it's the idea in Uncharted 4 is that Nate and Sam, they track down a woman who has their mother's journals. Their mother was the explorer, was the adventurer, and they've tracked down all this stuff. And they go into this house. They find their mother's charts and drawings and notes and research. And this woman, this elderly woman who's very sickly, tells them all about their mother. And it's just this wonderful moment of kind of validation, like that, because they never knew their father. I think that the father's out of the picture; he doesn't really get talked about, and the mother died of an illness, and so they then got sent to the orphanage. And we see them in the orphanage. We see Sam running away from the orphanage in the film, which is all technically true from the game, but the idea is that Nate also breaks out of the orphanage, and they take up their mother's quest, and they do it because they are actually fugitives from the law, and it's this wonderful thing where they carve out their identity as a response to the crimes they've committed or that they're being accused of, and they carve out their entire journey based on their mother's notes and their mother's research. And that is the thing that kind of signposts their life to come. What we get in this is the idea that all the theories were just told to them by their parents when they were young. And it's like, oh, mom and dad always believed, we were related to Sir Francis Drake. No, that's actually a fantasy that they created for themselves in the games. And it really speaks volumes to their character. It's not this thing that their parents told them. It's a fantasy they created just to give themselves some identity, because they never had an identity. They never felt like they had an identity. And it is mind-boggling that you have this wonderful three-dimensional character fleshed out in these games. Nothing that has anything to do with the video game medium. There is no challenge in adapting that for the screen. And instead they rewrote it. They rewrote Chloe's backstory as well and made it so underwhelming. They made and Sully's story is different as well. And it's just ultimately this and yet at the same time they've cherry picked stuff that I don't think anybody would have cared. Like the idea of the treasure hunt being Uncharted 4, the falling out of the plane is in Uncharted 3. And then, it's like they're weirdly cherry picking stuff that they didn't need to do. That with a little imagination they could have come up with stuff that's equally as interesting. And yet they're not cherry picking the stuff that is actually valuable, that the fans really cherish and love.
Yeah,
It's
it
like,
feels very I would call it vanilla. Like
Oh,
it
incredibly.
all like yeah, like
Yeah.
it's all just kind of watered down. Um, like from what everything that you're saying that you get in the video games. Um,
And again,
yeah, and it's just
I don't want to be that guy who says,
yeah,
why didn't they copy the games? You know, because I hate when people do that, and I know I sound like that
yeah,
right now. Because when people say that, it's usually like it's almost like they're being precious about the game or the move or the book or whatever the source material, and it's almost like they don't want. It's almost like they're feeling like they're being forced to give up one in favor of the other. Like you can't read the Hobbit book anymore because now you got to watch the Peter Jackson movies instead, and it's like it feels like a downgrade for them.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
I don't care about that stuff. Like to me, you do what you want with it. Like I think the Resident Evil movies, for example, the Paul W.S. Anderson ones, complete departures from the video games. There's
yeah,
nothing in common with the video games, but they are their own thing that you can have fun with. And to me, this they could have done something completely different, no problem. If they wanted to make Nathan Drake 14 years old and make him British and whatever and in set in the 40s, that's fine. I don't care. You can just do what you want with it. It is a different medium and it's a
yeah,
chance to do a fresh start. But if you're gonna cherry pick, if you're gonna say like, oh, this is very like, it's the orphanage and it's the brother missing and it's even the jokes about Sully's mustache and the cigars and all that kind of stuff. If you're going to make them look like the characters and feel like the characters, and you're going to have those musical cues in there and get the cameo from Nolan North,
yeah,
why are you changing it? Why are you downgrading it? Because that is what's happened here.
yeah. I would
So
say that, like, to use another movie as an example, like that suffers kind of from the same symptom is the Mortal Kombat movie from last year.
mm, mm.
Um, there's there's some things that they update. There's some things that they cherry pick from those games, and from a game that's started out with really no story. I mean, there was text on screen, I think,
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
original
yeah,
arcade
yeah.
games, but like, but then from there it just grew and grew to where like I just played through Mortal Kombat 11, and like those games are so far like out there now that it's so much fun because it's like a B movie, um, and so like, but then to go back and into the movie that came out, that movie was a Mortal Kombat movie without a tournament. Like
Yeah.
which is just like mind-boggling of they didn't, I don't know. So it kind of suffers from the same thing in my mind, to where it's like, okay, like this doesn't even need to be called Mortal Kombat. This doesn't even need to be called Uncharted because it's just like reskinned basically from another script, So
The most faithful thing, I think what you've described is exactly what this is exactly the same problem here, and I think it's the same problem that we got with the Resident Evil remake that we reviewed a few
mhm,
months back. It's trying to cherry pick the things that fans love about different games, putting them all into one movie, but then also trying to build a franchise off that. Well, you've kind of played all your cards at once now, haven't you? You've got no cards left to play. Like if they had set the first Resident Evil movie in the police station and the second one was in the mansion or the other way around or whatever, you can build a trilogy. You can build a series of films out of the different games then. You can't even do that with Uncharted now. The epilogue of this movie is clearly setting up the Uncharted 1 video game, right? But you've already given me like key set pieces from or key plot points from Uncharted 3. You've given me key moments from Uncharted 4. So those are two chapters in the Nathan Drake journey that we're not going to get now. So you've already disrupted everything in an attempt to kind of sell us on this. And, I feel like trust in the brand would have been enough. I mean, this is Uncharted.
yeah.
It's Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg. We would have seen this if they were reading the phone book, right? And so it's one of those things where I do feel like the filmmakers are weirdly overplaying their hands in this kind of unnecessary attempt to sell as many tickets as possible.
Yeah.
And don't forget, we're coming off the back of so many different Mission Impossible movies now, where Nathan Drake falling out of a plane doesn't have the same. It doesn't have that same value like that it would have had 5-10 years ago. Um,
Especially in terms of production of how, you have Tom Cruise strapping himself to a plane, doing all these stunts per like one per movie.
Falling from a plane in a single shot.
Yeah,
Like these things. Yeah,
yeah. And to like just in terms of the way that this was shot and the special effects were done, like not you're not having the wow factor of say what you are getting in Mission Impossible.
yeah, no.
So if you're losing that, then
But
and then not even
the
go.
equivalent to Ethan Hunt, the video game equivalent to Ethan Hunt is Nathan Drake. So those Mission Impossible comparisons are very apt because in the Uncharted games, Nathan Drake is doing stuff that would make Ethan Hunt and Tom Cruise jealous. And he's doing it in war zones, and he's doing it in the Amazon, or not the Amazon rainforest, in the just in the deep, deepest jungles of South America. The scene of him falling from the plane in this, he falls, he lands in the water. He's on the crate, and they land in the water, and then they wash up on a holiday resort. Okay,
Yeah.
in the third video game, he falls out of he lands in the desert, and he walks for days and days in the desert without water, and he gets lost, and he hallucinates, and he eventually stumbles upon the survivors of that plane wreckage, which you don't even see in this movie.
Yeah.
So like, again, it felt safe. And if you're worried about the credibility of that kind of a scene, maybe, well, it's equally incredible, because it doesn't matter whether you're landing in water or desert, you fell out of a plane,
Yeah.
So, again, weird creative choices. The
Yeah.
one thing I did like, which was cut short for me, was Antonio Banderas as the villain. I love the idea. It's very, very Uncharted, very, very Uncharted, to have this, the heir to this wealthy, the most powerful family in Spain or whatever, and then he's and this is a family that had their hands in all the worst parts of Spanish history, the Inquisition and so on, right? And so this is about them. Their whole mission is based on rewriting their family history. We're not going to be the family who was responsible for these terrible atrocities. We're going to be the family who did good and, discovered this treasure or restored the family name, or to its rightful glory or whatever. And that's real old school Uncharted kind of ways of a way of thinking for a villain. That's absolutely the most credible thing in this movie. What did you think about him, and what did you think about his death?
Whenever the way that you describe it is so much more interesting than what
Yeah.
I feel like I took from watching, because like I maybe I glazed over on a lot of like what he was whenever he was giving his speeches and everything, but like I don't feel like that was fully explored, even though like it's very interesting. But yeah, it kind of does feel like it feels like that was the intention to make him feel very like traditional and like kind of just like what you've had before, and then reverse that by killing him and making the main bad guy the woman that we've
Joe
been.
Braddock, yeah, which is a new
Yeah,
character,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, it is. Okay. And so like to like it feels like it's kind of this like it's deconstructing like the trope, but not in an interesting way, to me, because that's sacrificed for nothing. So that's sacrifice for like the last 30 minutes of the movie. So like we don't get anything different out of her becoming the main villain at the end because she's just she has her
The stakes aren't
um
raised. Yeah,
yeah, the stakes
yeah,
aren't raised. She doesn't
yeah.
really feel like she has agency, like because it's kind of
Mm,
like why does she kill him?
mm.
Um and not like they don't succeed any more than they would have without him, but I don't know.
A lot of the time in Uncharted, the treasure has some dangerous quality to it. Like there's a reason why the people of that civilization buried it. You know, there's
Yeah.
usually some danger attached to bringing this back home, and it could be like illness, you know, virus. It could be that it has some properties that drive people mad or something. You know, there's all these kind of and then Neil Druckmann's contribution then was to kind of make it more metaphorical, like the search for this treasure drives people mad, it drives people to violence, and everyone turns on each other and blah blah blah, so um he kind of took the literal and made it more credible in that way. But the if you had said to me that this woman Jo is going to kill Antonio Banderas to then, who's perfectly cast, by the way. Like, I mean, when I saw Tom Holland, I was like, okay, I can kind of see that as Nate. Mark Wahlberg, okay, I can kind of see that as Sully. I could also see Mark Wahlberg as Nathan Drake. Like, I mean, he's probably more appropriate as Nathan Drake than Sully. And I, but when I heard Antonio Banderas was the villain, I thought, yeah, that's exactly the casting I would have done for
Yeah.
a European villain, to these American heroes, that kind of thing. And but yeah, if you told me that that her plan is to use the dangerous element of this treasure, whatever that might be, for her own affair, like, okay, the stakes are being raised, but it wasn't. It was just she wanted the treasure for herself, I guess.
Yeah.
And I
I
thought,
don't.
yeah.
Do we even get a scene of her after that, like outside of action,
No, no, no.
like
She's
of
just looking for
fighting?
the treasure. That's it.
Yeah, and so
Um,
like we don't like so to sacrifice that, you've already set up Antonio Banderas this whole movie prior to that scene of killing him, and you just throw it away for a shock factor of like, okay, he's dead. Wow. Um,
they do.
but then don't get anything out of it.
Yeah, yeah. There's no motivation there's no
Yeah.
explanation about what she does. She doesn't suddenly sit on a throne or something. You know what I mean? Metaphorically, she's just
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just one less person to share the gold with, I guess. And I
Hmm.
just thought that's not that's not good enough. And you've sacrificed. I think that scene is so typical of the writing process of this movie. You had a good villain. Credit where credit is due. He was a good villain. Killed his own father. Like he was prepared to go where he needed to go to get this, to achieve this end. What will he do to our heroes then? That kind of thing. There was a good threat there. He's brilliant, with his car. He's like, don't be careful of this car, don't scratch it. And I love that we already know that car is going to fly out of the plane
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
prologue. And I thought, brilliant, he's going to be pissed when he lands and he finds his car, washing up on the beach or something.
Yeah.
But he doesn't live to see that. And I thought that was a missed opportunity, because surely you want his reaction as his car flies out or you want that to be the way he dies. Like he's in the car and the car goes flying out the plane or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for him to die without seeing his baby, like, crash out of the car, out of the plane,
Yeah.
it's such a missed opportunity when you set it up. But it's so
Well,
indicative
and
of the
there.
right. It's sorry, just to finish my point.
Yeah.
It's so
No. You.
indicative of the writing process, because you've got this great villain, and then you've downgraded it to this henchman character. And that is exactly what this movie is. It is great characters with great backstories, great treasure hunts, great puzzles. You could have rated 10 years worth of video game design, and video game writing, to take all these different puzzles that are really well crafted, and you could have mixed and matched, and gamers probably would have even forgotten that you were pulling them from the games, and you could have made it all feel fresh and on a real high level, high bar that would have given Indiana Jones a run for his money. And instead, what we got the stabbing the games in the back in favor of the lesser villain or the lesser hero. You know, so that scene is so representative of the thinking behind making this movie. I think anyway. That's my. Sorry, I cut you
Yeah.
off. Sorry, you go.
No. Like I think that there's like, just to pull a little scene out of that, or character moment from for Antonio Banderas, is like, even just to the point of him hiring Chloe separately and kind of having that be like a reveal is interesting in revealing his character, revealing Chloe's character like through action. That again gets thrown away for a passive character throughout the majority of the movie, if I think about it. Of what's her name?
Chloe,
um
is it?
no, the other,
Oh,
the
Joe
one who
Braddock.
becomes Joe
Joe
Braddock. Yeah.
Braddock. Yeah.
And so like, to kind of use another example from Lara Croft Tomb Raider movie, the first one, you have the same kind of uh, dynamic between the main bad guy and the henchman with Ian Glenn, where he, in the last, the third act, once they get to their goal, he flips that, kills the main bad guy who we thought it was. But we've been with Ian Glenn the whole time, so obviously, like, clearly he's the main bad guy that we know. So like, that's kind of interesting to compare the two, where um, Antonio Banderas is killed much earlier, but and doesn't really make as much of a statement, I think, as it does in Tomb Raider. Um, so yeah.
I also thought the directing itself wasn't fantastic. I mean, so there's a character at the beginning. I think her name is Zoe. She's the woman in the bar, the kind of well-to-do woman with the bracelet, and Nathan swipes the bracelet from her, and then Sully compliments him on his pickpocketing, and then on his sleight of hand, and then takes it back from him, and thou shall not steal and all that kind of stuff. And that's clever. But I was
Yeah.
convinced, I was like, she's working for the villains. I was
Yeah.
like, she's obviously working for the villains. Nate thinks he's got one up on her. She's going to come back later with a bunch of goons and rough him up, and Sully's going to be there to help him or something
Yeah.
like that. Because I thought, you can't just have this. This woman has more dialogue than the villain does. I mean, we learn more about her than we do about Joe Bradley. Like, really, we learn where she lives. We learn, like, where, all these things about her and her favorite drink and everything like that, and how she feels. And it's insane the amount of screen time they gave this character that is literally just there as a way for Sully to just observe Nate. And it is,
Yeah.
you could have achieved the same thing. Remember when he bumps into the doorman and he pickpockets the keys?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that would have been the same. That could have been the exact same. That serves the exact same function, is to show he's good with his hands. You didn't need the sweet talking, like he knows how all these drinks are made and all that. Like, it was so. And there's also, like, the way certain shots are framed as well. Certain characters will walk in the background and you think, oh, I'm supposed to pay attention to that person. And it turns out, no, it's just an extra. And like, there are extras in this movie that are more attention grabbing than some of the main characters in those scenes. The whole idea as well of, when you go into, like, are we going to go into the deepest jungles of the Philippines? No, we're not. We're just going into this little cave, and we're just going to swim under, and then, oh, look, there are the ships. Do you know how long it takes in the video games for you to get from the jungle, the beginning of the jungle, to your treasure trove? It takes hours, and they're cutting through. They're cutting through growth and everything, and it just was right there. How was that not discovered before now?
That's a problem that is in most of, like, this style of treasure hunting movie. National Treasure suffers from it too, even though it's more entertaining, and you have Nicolas Cage. So, but like, there's so there's the objects that they have to obtain and use throughout that everyone's after. And then those are used to finally find the big treasure at the end. But then that's all thrown away by the antagonist figuring that out just as simply without it.
Yes,
And
yes. That's such a
that it
good.
happens in
Yeah,
every movie like this where Sean Bean in National Treasure 1 figures it out with the letters without needing
the
the
expert.
actual declaration of independence. So it's like, okay, so that whole sequence just got thrown out the window.
You're
And
ruining
so,
National Treasure. I was gonna say National Treasure is a much better Uncharted movie than this is.
but it is
Like,
because it's having more fun.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
yeah.
as like it
And
trusts
and
its
the payoffs are better as well. And anyway,
well,
sorry.
and you're more involved as a viewer. Like
Yeah,
you're along for the discovery as well. Um, Whereas in this one, like, he figures it out with the compass, and then that's all thrown away by, oh, he's going on the boat. Let's follow him. Um, and so, like, yeah, that's a big problem with these types of movies where it's like, can you not employ like or implore like more
and
imagination?
the solutions are so easy. It's just you have the villains capture the hero and say, "Well,
Yeah.
now at gunpoint, you're going to bring me to the treasure." It's just
Yeah.
you have them work together. I mean, it's been done in countless movies. I think they do it in
It
Indiana
happens
Jones a
in
lot, and Tomb
yeah,
Raider
yeah,
as well,
Indiana
isn't it?
Jones, Tomb Raider, it
Yeah, yeah,
happens.
yeah.
Yeah, Tomb Raider is the perfect example.
Yeah, just go with
Apparently.
that.
Yeah.
So I mean, just on the subject, because we mentioned the characters, we mentioned the puzzle solving and all that. So Sam Drake, the brother, who disappears at the beginning of the movie, I feel like they didn't explore that well enough. Now, I'm not going to get into the games or anything like that here for this for this, because I think the writing of this movie itself is the problem. It's got nothing to do with the way the backstory, the way he's represented. It's just the amount of screen time that character gets is not enough to make us care. I think, first of all, but also what was missing from this, I feel, was a prologue scene where instead of a flashback of Nate and Sam in the orphanage together, we should have got a scene of Sam and Sully finding the journal, giving us a little bit of context about the mission, introducing us to Drake. Like Sully could be saying, "Hey, Drake, get over here," or yeah, I mean, he probably wouldn't call him by his surname, but you could have kind of a reference to Drake. The first person we meet. Oh, that's not Tom Holland. I thought that was going to be Tom Holland. Oh, it's a different Drake. And then we see what we think is his death. Because obviously we'll learn later he's alive. We think it's his death, and Sully abandons him, and you can show Sully feeling guilty for abandoning him, and maybe that's what's bringing him to Nate. I need Nate to finish the job, but I also want to do right by Nate. Like, I want to make sure that I protect Nate because Sam would have wanted that. I think something like that would have just elevated this film way up in my ranking. That one scene at the beginning, where more context about the case at hand, the mission at hand, setting up what's her name again? Joe Braddock
Joe Bratton
as this
or
like
Braddock.
as this deadly character who has killed one of our heroes. You know, that we have a rightful
Yeah.
reason to be worried about her, not just, oh, she's beating up the security guards at the auction. It's like she's a real threat. She has murdered Sam in cold blood, or we think she has. Um, all that kind of stuff, I think, would have just elevated everybody's motivations. I would have cared more about Nate and his quest to find his brother. I would have cared more about the villain. I would have cared more about Sully and his attempt to build a relationship around Nate. I don't know. What did you feel about the whole Sam thing overall?
Well, I think like as you were saying all of that, I think that like kind of boils down to like we're being told everything that has happened instead of shown, like where it's, we start out with that we understand because we're shown and we're involved in it. Whereas like everything with that bad guy Sam's supposed death, is all told to us. So it's like, well, why do we really care? Even though I know we're in the shoes of Tom Holland, so like that makes sense. But yeah, I think that's what it kind of boils down to.
Yeah,
But what
yeah.
was the specific question that you?
But just did you feel that Sam was underutilized, or did you feel that he was necessary? How did you feel about the like the
Yeah,
reading out of the postcards and all that kind of stuff? Because I don't know, I wasn't big on it.
yeah. It it just kind of gets lost to me, like which is a lot of this movie. Is like it just doesn't really um it's never really paid off like super well. So I just kind of like don't really. It's underwhelming. I knew that Sam's character was being held until the end because that was gonna be the post credit like reveal. Knowing that his character is heavily used later. I don't know when, but later on. Um, so yeah, like it was kind of one of those things that like, oh, I knew it was coming, but yeah, it never really goes much farther than just being told everything, dealing with his character. The postcard was fine. It was a basic puzzle. But the scene at the beginning feels very like this. The flashback scene to me just felt so lazy as far as like how to tell a story, how to set up a character, because it was literally just like, let's go back to the beginning of this character and the brother and just show you. And really, like the only thing that kind of is a through line with that is the match cut that of him grabbing him falling or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that's the only through line. There's nothing there to me story wise because you open on the big set piece and then cut back to that for no reason. Um,
That's Uncharted 2 in a nutshell.
yeah,
Uncharted 2 opens with a cliffhanger moment. It then cuts way back to the origin of the mission. You make your way back, and then around the halfway point of the game, you're back in that. You recreate that. We see how that, we build up to that moment again,
yeah.
and then we play out that
I
moment.
I enjoyed the structure
Mm, mm.
because the thing that I enjoyed about that, which was probably one of the highlights for me, was how it changed. Like we experienced Nate's climb. It's a fun set piece, but then once it comes back to it, the little detail of the car, like we know that car is going overboard. So like that joke's been set up and paid off. There's all the other stuff happening on the inside of the plane, and then like them like what's going on with
Yeah,
Chloe as
yeah.
she fights. So like there's reason, like there's
That was the
as
smartest
of
moment. That was the
yeah,
smartest filmmaking, let's say, of the
yes, yeah,
whole piece for me.
yeah.
I did enjoy the flying ships, because I just liked how they started recreating little Pirates of the Caribbean moments where like they all swing over on the ropes, on the grappling hooks, like they're invading the ships, and it just felt very old school pirate esque, and they're up in the sky. But then I remember just feeling deprived of that greater payoff. And I'm glad you mentioned National Treasure. National Treasure has the greatest treasure payoff for me of any movie, including Indiana Jones or anything. The moment where they get in there after this well earned victory, they get into this treasure room and they light up the room and the whole room fills up and the music hits its crescendo and all that, and everybody just is hugging and just like grabbing each other and they're so happy, and it's just giddy, and it's father and son next to each other, and everything is just, the whole life's research is paid off. It's just amazing. And you as an audience member just sitting there, I remember watching the cinema and just getting goosebumps just at the thought of like, you did it, guys. It's amazing. You did it. And it's the exact same kind of journey that Nate goes on in his world, but and you get it. And then you just see the, they've lit up the room using the, they've ignited the oil around the room, and it's lit up and it's all great. And then you just see the flame catches another bit of oil that's been disrupted by a bit of stone or rubble or broken rubble, over the years. And then the rest of this room
Yeah.
lights up, and it's like, it's it's just the greatest encore I can think of for these types of movies. And then you realize this was just the beginning. There is 10
Yeah,
times, 10 times this room, full of treasure. And I was waiting for that countless times through this movie. There's a moment where um, Chloe and Nate are on this crate floating in the water, and Chloe's face lights up, and she's like, Nate, are you seeing what I'm seeing? And we're not seeing what she's seeing. And Nate is like, yeah, well, I see water. And she's like, no, you've got to look. And it's almost like Alan. I was thinking Alan Grant grabbing Ellie Sattler's hair to look at the Brachiosaurus. One of the great reveals of cinema history. And I thought, what are we going to get here? Is it like, is it an ancient city? Is it the Filipino army and like moving into this place? And like, is there something that like no, it's a holiday resort. And then later we get to this cave and we go under the water, and I was like, what are we gonna find? It's two ships. And then I thought, okay, when they lift them up, obviously we're going to get a view now of the real treasure that awaits us. No, they're just sword fighting on a ship. I genuinely felt robbed of the great payoff. And I just thought, we spent Act 1 in New York, Act 2 in Barcelona, which is great. No shade to Barcelona, but it's like that's Da Vinci Code territory. That's Angels and Demons. That's those types of movies. It's church hidden chambers in churches and stuff like that. That's Tom Hanks's territory. We're talking about cave diving. We're talking about a guy who jumps from one cliff side to another. We're talking about like nature. His exploration happens out in the wild. It's literally called Uncharted. And and this is just so it's so flat and so I've seen tourist brochures that have more excitement in their visuals than the promise of what this is a perfect failure to live up to the promise of the premise. I've said this, I've been repeating myself now like a parrot throughout this review.
No.
But I do feel, I was like, this is what Hobbit fans must have felt like when they watched those movies, right? I love those movies, but that's what they must have felt like when they were complaining about that, I don't know. Is this what people really felt like when they watched the prequels of Star Wars for the first time? Like this kind of disappointment? Because I just felt disappointed with this.
And it's interesting because like I think that some of this comes down to direction of knowing how to make scenes dramatic, use the drama like National Treasure does of they're at the end of the journey and the treasure was stolen. And then it's the reveal of, no, it was another puzzle. And then the drama of lighting that and using the visual drama of that on top of, as well as the story drama and the character drama. Whereas this doesn't have that. And it kind of like, I was looking at also the other director credits for Ruben Fleischer. I don't know if that's how you,
Ruben Fleischer.
So he did Zombieland. Those
really?
are to me the ones that stuck out. And like, so this guy clearly knows how to direct comedy. Didn't really feel like there was much of that. There's a few moments, but
you know what? I there's a reason why I haven't mentioned Ruben Fleischer by name or anything, or any of the writing team either, for that matter, is because I don't believe they're at fault here.
Exactly.
I genuinely believe this is in the same way that with the Resident Evil movie. I don't think that was the director's fault. I genuinely believe this is down to studio. I know I criticized some of the directing a while ago and the action scene, and some of that stuff, but I genuinely think their hands were tied from day one. I just don't think they were given any leeway with this movie for it to be as strong as it could have been. Henry Jackman, acclaimed movie score, a movie composer, did the score for Uncharted 4, and it is incredible. And I thought, surely he's going to do the score for this movie, right? No. And like, do they even bother? Do they even use the score of these games or movies? No, they just reference it slightly near the end, So I do think there was a whole attempt, like, we're making a different movie. let's just rewrite it as an Uncharted movie. Like that to
Yeah.
me is what this felt like. Um,
Well, and I think that that's like, so like even with the Mortal Kombat movie, a lot of the video game movies, like they're trying to do, and this may come back to the studio, um, as they're trying to make it, but it's trying to do so much, trying to give you everything in one movie, but set up a franchise. And so it's like kind of conflicting within itself of like, um, where to me, it's like they don't have the trust, whoever they may be, they don't have the trust that this will be successful. So we got to throw all of it into one movie, because what if we don't get a second movie?
yeah,
While
yeah,
simultaneously trying to set up a second movie. So like, and that's why I say just with the director, like he clearly knows how to direct comedy, and and
action comedy.
I mean,
Yeah,
some of
yeah,
his other action comedy, yeah, some of his other credits, like they're good. And so it's like, yeah, it has to come back to trying to do
yeah,
too much
yeah.
with one movie.
And the funny thing is that if they had created, if they had gone down that road and just taken a spec script and just renamed it Uncharted and just rewrote the characters slightly, um, that would have been fine. Like you didn't need to do you didn't need to try and recreate moments from the games. But if you had put the score from the games in there, it would have done more to make it feel like an Uncharted experience, for me anyway, than it would if you had cast Nolan North as Nathan Drake on the screen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or Nathan Fillion. Who's clearly the inspiration for Nathan Drake. I mean, first names aside. Like if you had actually gone out of your way to like recreate those moments pitch perfect, um, you wouldn't have done as much a job of capturing the feel of Uncharted than just by putting that score in. So they could have done a completely original thing. It could have been like, it could have felt more like National Treasure 3 than anything else. But you put the score in, and you would have had us all the PlayStation fans would have been lining up, and it's just yeah, it just feels like they don't know what the property really is that they're tapping into. I'd be very interested to know what Naughty Dog really felt about this. Um, when we were watching it, we just thought, this feels like Spider-Man. This feels like they're trying to capture the magic of Tom Holland's Spider-Man run more than they're trying to capture what Naughty Dog did with this game.
Yeah.
Um, anyway,
Well, and the last point I'll make, I guess, too, like this might jump back a little bit to our first point of like the the flashback and how to open the movie, which is where it opens is fine. But setting up a new character, you don't have to give us the backstory immediately, like because of Indiana Jones. The first time we're introduced to him is mid adventure, so why not, like I mean, I guess I like with Nate's character, it's taking him back to the very beginning and then introducing him to the adventure. But still, like I don't know, it's just kind of
you just
there's
just have Nate out trying to finish his brother's quest. He gets
yeah,
captured by the police. Sully busts him out. There you go.
yeah.
Done. You can either come with me or you can rot in the jail. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And there you go. You're done. And you've kept us out of Manhattan. I don't know. Look,
Yeah.
the thing is that when the movie's finished, I almost gave my wife a lecture about what Uncharted is, because I was like, I don't want you thinking that that's what it is, because
Yeah.
I'm not saying this to be hyperbolic. I do believe Uncharted 4 is the best AAA video game, like console video game ever made in terms of production value, writing, characters, music, score, everything. I think it's absolutely perfect. I know people will have their opinions about it, and that's fine. But for me, time and again, I keep coming back to it and just feeling like, wow, like nothing is hitting that for me. Nothing is hitting that standard for me. And those other games are absolutely fantastic as well. And go watch the YouTube playthroughs. go read up on the characters. Go, there are, I think, graphic novels and things like that out there as well. There's a lot of transmedia out there around Nathan Drake. Uh, he's a wonderful character. There are more interesting side characters than Nathan Drake. The villains are fascinating. Everyone is fascinating in those stories, and the set pieces and the imagination and the puzzles are just so engrossing and engaging and immersive. And yeah, Uncharted 4 is the best pirate story I've ever come across. And I'm somebody who loves pirate lore and stuff. So for me, Uncharted 4 is just the best exploration of that. I think it does more for exploring pirate lore than Assassin's Creed Black Flags does. And that was a game set during the golden age of piracy. There's real magic in the writing of those games. So I say to you, Caleb, I say to anyone listening, go check them out if you haven't. They are absolutely incredible. And my hope is that in a few years' time, I was pretty kind of lukewarm on the Jurassic World franchise, being a massive Jurassic Park fan. But I've actually come around to that franchise now, having kind of seen the full vision of it. They're not perfect movies, but I really enjoy them now more than I did before. I hope that I will become warmer on this movie as they release more entries. I hope that I can have more fun with this in future as I kind of start to see the bigger picture that they have for this incarnation. But when I'm spoiled with so much great content on my PlayStation, it is hard for me to get behind it. I don't know. Closing remarks.
I mean, I'm definitely going to go play those games. They're going to move to the top of my what I'm playing through. So
do them in order. Don't cut corners.
Yeah.
Do 1, 2, 3, and then do 4, and then do Lost Legacy. And and try and avoid spoilers as much as you can. I've tried to avoid spoiling some of the key moments of games for you here, but they're genuinely wonderful if I haven't made that point already. Anyway, thanks, Caleb. Remember to subscribe if you like this episode, both on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Also follow us on social media. All the links are in the description. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode. In the meantime, thanks for listening, everyone.